Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you. If you're returning, I'm equally as excited to have you. Over here, we talk about true crime things, true crime cases. I try to upload once a week. Sometimes I'm not able to because life is busy, but I do try to upload at least once a week. So if true crime is something you're interested in, you can go ahead and hit the little subscribe button down below, as well as the bell icon, so you can be notified when I upload. I do want to give a quick warning that some of the things that we talk about here can be a little heavy, so if that's something your mental health cannot handle, just go ahead and click off this video. I'll catch you somewhere else, but your mental health is always going to be more important than any YouTube video ever will be. So with that, let's just jump into today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the boy in the box. I did cover this story a while ago over on my TikTok. Not as much information considering that TikTok still hasn't given me the 10-minute options, so I put in as much information as I could, so I figured we'd jump into a little bit more of the story today over on YouTube so we could do a little of a longer format. And as the majority of you probably know, there was a major update in this case a couple of months ago, so we'll talk about that as well. So this case goes all the way back to 1957. On February 25th of 1957, a boy was looking at his animal traps in a rural area of Philadelphia, in the area of Fox Chase. Now, this was a very rural part in 1957, and the boy who initially found the box the first time said he was afraid that his traps would be confiscated by police, and so he didn't report anything. The very next day, there was another college student kid that was in the area, and he saw a rabbit run into like a brush type area, and he knew that there were traps all around, so he decided to investigate. Now, there is some speculation that maybe he was like a peeping Tom and he was trying to look into windows, and that's why he was actually there. But this college student, either way, was afraid to say anything to police either, because he was afraid that he would be a suspect in the crime, or he didn't want to be involved. But he didn't want to be involved, which makes me think that he might have actually been a peeping Tom, and he was afraid that he would be arrested for that or get in trouble for that. But it is said that he went to his priest and confessed all of this, and the priest told him to call police. But either way, this boy was found. When police arrived at the scene, they found the box in question, and inside they found the body of a small boy. The box was laying kind of off of the road, and it was open on one side. Other than the box itself, they found a handkerchief with a letter embroidered onto it, and they also found a blue corduroy hat with a leather belt around, or a leather strap around it, and a buckle. But that was really all of the evidence that was found at that scene. The boy was taken to the medical examiner, and an autopsy was performed. The autopsy was performed by the chief medical examiner, Dr. Joseph Spellman. Dr. Spellman thought the boy to be around 4 to 6 years old. He had blue eyes and blonde hair. He noticed that the boy's hair had recently been cut, and the reason he thought that was because there were clumps of hair stuck to the boy's body, and it was a very terrible haircut, almost like someone had done it to hide the boy's identity. There were some areas where the hair was cut so short it was very near the scalp, and there were other areas where the hair was longer. The boy had also recently been washed clean, so he had just recently gotten a bath. They also noticed that his fingers were wrinkled, like right before his death he had been in water, or right after his death. Like either or, he was in water around the time of his death. They also found remnants of a meal, suggesting that he had eaten just 2 hours prior to his death, and it was a meal of baked beans. The boy was 41 inches tall and only 30 pounds. He was only 30 pounds, so this meant that the boy was very malnourished. He also had several scars on his body. There was an L-shaped scar on his elbow and a well-healed scar on his groin, suggesting a possible hernia surgery. And there was another scar on his left ankle that resembled a cut-down incision, and this would have been used for like a blood transfusion, so like an IV type scar. The boy did not have any vaccination marks, which also led the medical examiner to believe that he was not enrolled in public school. They also decided that the boy had died from blunt force trauma, as he had trauma on the side of his head and fresh bruises. So the medical examiner thought that he had either been beaten to death with a blunt object, or he might have also been squeezed to death. So he couldn't rule out that the boy had possibly been squeezed to death when someone was holding him down and shaving his head. So investigators started looking into the clues that they did have, and that included the box. They were unable to get any usable fingerprints from the box, but they were able to find that it had been used to ship a bassinet from JCPenney. So they were able to track down this box to the local JCPenney, and they found out that that JCPenney had received 12 of these bassinets, and all of them had been paid for in cash, so they were not able to track down who had bought these bassinets, even though they were able to find the other 11 bassinets that had been sold that were the same. But they had received 12 of these bassinets on November 27th of 1956, and they were sold for $7.50 between December 3rd of 1956 and February 16th of 1957. But they didn't, like I said, they did not keep records of who had purchased these bassinets, so they were not able to find who was the original owner of this particular bassinet. The blanket that the boy had been wrapped in was mass-produced. They were able to track down that it had either been produced in Quebec, Canada, or in North Carolina, but they were sold at like convenience stores around the country or at general stores, and so this was a complete dead end. They were not able to track down who had owned this particular blanket. The blanket had been cut in half pretty roughly, and it had also recently been washed and mended. The thread that was used to mend the blanket was a pretty cheap quality. So then police started looking at the hat that was found at the scene. Now, they weren't able to exactly tie this hat to the boy in the box, but they did look into it a little further, and they were able to track down the manufacturer of the hat. And because of a label that was inside the hat, and they were able to track it down to the Robbins Eagle Hat Company in Philadelphia. This hat was once again one of 12 that was made. It was made of scraps of corduroy. And so they were again not able to track down the name of the person that had bought this hat, but they did show the people who had sold this hat a picture of the boy in the box, and they were able to say that the person who had bought this hat did resemble the boy that was found in the box. And they also remembered him because this hat originally had not been sold with the leather strap and buckle, and the person who bought the hat had come back later to have the strap and the buckle sewn on. So at this point, there's basically zero leads as to who this boy is or who his family was. There was nothing that they could do. So police made up this composite sketch of this boy and sent out over 300,000 flyers to everyone in Philadelphia. They sent it to law enforcement agencies, they sent it to grocery stores to put up on bulletin boards. They also sent it out with gas bills to almost every single person in the country. So this gas company took the flyer and put it in with people's gas bills and sent it out. So over 300,000 flyers were sent out to see if anyone could recognize the boy or knew who he was or who his family was or anything, but there were absolutely no leads that came out from this. After 5 months of investigating, police buried the boy in a potter's field with a potter's field is where they would, send prisoners or people who died without families, and they put up a small headstone that said, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." And this case went completely cold for a very long time. His identity wasn't known for 65 years, but people didn't forget about him. This case got national attention even back then. It was a very well-known case and still is a very well-known case. I'm sure everyone who's in the true crime community knows about the boy in the box. But the boy's body would stay in that potter's field until November 4th of 1998, when they exhumed his body in hopes of getting a DNA sample. But after a year, the investigators came out and said that they were not able to get a successful DNA sample from the child. And that's when a forensic artist named Frank Bender came out with another composite sketch of what he thought the boy would look like. alive. Now, this is also well circulated, and still nobody came forward and had no idea who this boy was. But after he was exhumed, he was placed into a cemetery in Philadelphia and given a proper headstone, and it was labeled America's Unknown Child. But people still continued trying to find the identity of this boy. So in 2000, there was another attempt made at getting a DNA sample from the boy. And then in 2001, yet another DNA sample they tried to get another DNA sample from the boy, but none of these was successful at all. It wasn't until 2018 when another person came out and tried to get a sample from the boy that it was successful. This person, I can't remember her name, but she came out and tried to get a sample from the unknown boy, the boy in the box, and she said that the DNA was like confetti. So she spent 2 years trying to recreate his DNA so that she could get an accurate sample for testing. She was successful in this. So she was able to identify the boy in the box. But before we get into who the boy in the box is, let's talk about some of the theories that surround his murder. There was a man that worked in the medical examiner's office where the autopsy for the boy in the box was done. His name was Remington Bristow. Remington basically became obsessed with the case, and he reached out to a psychic in New Jersey, and this psychic it described a house that was a foster home near where the boy was found. Ironically enough, there was a foster home pretty close to the area where the boy was found, and it matched the description of that the psychic had given Remington. This psychic would eventually make a trip down to Philadelphia from New Jersey and led Remington directly to the foster house that matched the description in her first vision, I guess. And Remington completely dove into this case and completely suspected that it was this family, in fact, that was involved in the case. His theory is that the foster father had a stepdaughter that he was having an inappropriate relationship with, and he was essaying her and accidentally got his stepdaughter pregnant. In order to hide the pregnancy, they hid the child away from the rest of the world. And when the boy accidentally died, the stepfather dumped his body. He backs up these claims by saying he went to an estate sale. At this estate sale, he found a bassinet that was the bassinet that was in the box that the boy was found in. He also says that he saw blankets that matched the ones that the boy was wrapped in. So all of this really led him to believe that this family was in fact involved in the boy's murder. Police did investigate this, though. They questioned the family, and they even took DNA samples, and it turns out that this family was not at all involved in the boy in the box's murder. So this brings us to the second theory that has any kind of solid claims behind it. But in 2002, there was a woman that came forward, and she's only known as M. I do think a couple of people have found her real identity, but I am going to just refer to her as M because it doesn't seem like she wants her identity out there. So M came forward to police and said that her mother had bought a child named Jonathan that was just 2 years old, or 2 or 4 years old. She had bought this child from a family, and this child was used for her sick ways, I guess you could say. M says that her mother was extremely abusive and that she would use this child as basically her punching bag, and she would frequently essay this child as well. M talks about a time close to around the same time that the boy was found, that her and the boy had had a dinner of baked beans, and after that, her mother had told her to give Jonathan, the boy, a bath. It was during this bath that the boy threw up the dinner, and this had enraged M's mother, and she had beaten the boy to death in the bathtub. She then claims that they had disposed of the boy on the side of the road somewhere. Police did look into this, and unfortunately they found that M had a pretty extensive history of mental illness. They also talked to M's neighbors, and they all were adamant that there had never been a boy around the area or in M's family's house or anything like that. But the fact that M has a history of mental illness almost makes me believe her more, because if she had gone through extensive abuse, that would lead to some, mental illnesses that are that she would struggle with. And it also makes me believe the story more that the neighbors didn't see anything, because if she really had bought this boy illegally, then she would want to hide him away. So of course the neighbors wouldn't see anything. But either way, M's claims have kind of been discarded and thought to be not real. But either way, the boy's identity was not known until December of 2002. So just like a month ago, they came out with who this boy is. The last DNA sample that they took was able to be rebuilt, and with that they put it into like the ancestry, the way they've been finding a lot of killers. They put it onto the ancestry websites. Through that they were able to find his birth certificate, and they also found out that he was never issued a social security number. But his name is Jospeh Augustus Zarelli. He was born on January 13th of 1953. That would have made him 4 years old when he was murdered. They also found that he does have living siblings, but both of his parents have since passed. Police are not releasing anything on the investigation going forward, but they did say that they do have a theory as to what happened, and they do have suspects. But I think that it's really nice that we are finally able to give the boy in the box a name, and that he is maybe able to rest in peace. But yeah, that's kind of all I have on this story. If there are further updates, I will absolutely do an update on Joseph's case, but it is nice to finally give the boy in the box his identity back, and maybe one day give him the justice that he deserves, because he was just a baby when he was murdered. But what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think that there's any realness behind M's claims? I do feel like there might be something to it. I do know that Jospeh came from a pretty well-off family, and so the fact that his murder was hidden for such a long time is kind of strange. Do you think that maybe his family sold him to M's mother? Or what are your thoughts on this? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that we'll ever get the full story of what happened to Jospeh? But leave your thoughts down in the comments below. I would love to have a discussion down there. And that's all I have today. But I hope this finds you safe and well and happy. And I will see you next Tuesday. So yeah, bye.